Hello and welcome to Breaking Ground on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view on what's happening on the ground and about new trends emerging in the construction industry. Today, I'm delighted to pick up on a series we started in recent months looking at self-builds, and this show is brought to you in partnership with Place Engage, a data-driven platform for more successful public consultation and community engagement for your next development project. And so in the vein of self-building, I'm delighted to be joined by Eoghan Donnelly, a self-builder from County Clare. And you'll find him and you can follow his journey and April's journey on Instagram at self-build_in_the_hills. So self-build in the hills in County Clare. Eoghan, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And it's a nice surprise to be invited onto this show. So thank you for having me.
Eoghan, we celebrate new homes in all their guises, and if you're doing it yourself as a self-build, that's even more of a cause for celebration. So fantastic. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and April. And obviously April's not joining us today, she's working, but tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you down the self-building route.
Yeah, so look, it's fairly easy, really. When I met April, God, many moons ago in 2012, we kind of had an idea in our head that we'd always like to build our own home eventually.
Are you both from County Clare?
We are. She's from one part of the county and I'm from the other. So we met in college in Limerick, and Jesus, I won't bore you with the stories from then till now, but it's been a whirlwind. And we got married there just prior to COVID starting in December 2019, and then what followed on from that naturally would be to get our first home. So we were looking around the market. We were trying to decide whether it be Ennis or would it be other part of Clare, maybe Limerick, maybe Galway even. But we kind of always wanted to keep on the west coast, or as west as possible. And we just couldn't really find a place or decide or really come up with a decision between the two of us where we wanted to do or what we wanted to do. But all routes lead home, and we were fortunate enough to get a site at April's home in O'Gunlow, just outside of Killaloe in East Clare.
Oh, fantastic. When you were looking initially, did you consider existing or second-hand homes or indeed new builds kind of within developments?
Yeah, look, all options were open, but I think the two of us were really creative people, if I not to sound too arrogant. So we kind of wanted to put those skills to the test and come up with designing and planning and throwing ourselves into all the natural stress that comes with a self-build. So it was something
Do you have any experience yourself or April in the industry? So you say you're coming from the creative side. So what kind of background do you both have?
Yeah, so look, I'm a civil engineer by trade. Now, look, the one thing that would hamper me is that I've never been in the buildings game. It's always been very heavily civil-based, utilities, roads, bridges, so on and so forth, flood defence schemes. So nothing that I can live in. So it was kind of an eye-opener.
But the only thing is, having that's a fantastic foundation to have, that you'll be able to, you'll know quality workmanship when it's going in, you'll understand the structure, you'll understand an awful lot more maybe than others who aren't coming from that kind of background.
Well, I hope so.
And what does April do?
Yeah, so April actually is, her family is involved in building as well. So her father would have been a foreman on sites growing up, and she would have grown up in construction sites. So she would have picked up her ideas over the years of what she liked and what she didn't like. And like in fairness to April, now April's working in the healthcare industry at the moment, and loving it, and with all the stresses and trials and tribulations that come with that as well. So it's the two of us. We kind of have a palette that's spread between us, and we have our own kind of expertise in these areas. But we're just trying to cope with the rest of us, I suppose, with how to build a house. It's a learning game every day. It's a school day, as they say.
Yeah, but the only thing is, look, you're coming from a place where you wouldn't be intimidated by the build on both your parts, and that's a really big first hurdle to overcome. So when you had decided upon the site, and it's fantastic when you have the opportunity to build on family land. How was the planning process for you?
The planning process was interesting, is probably the most political way of saying it. It would look for there's horror stories out there. There obviously is, and we, like, in my own eyes, maybe that I'm exaggerating a little bit, but unfortunate for us, there's a protected structure not 300 meters from our property, and that kind of dictated a few bits and pieces with our house, following on from the neighbouring properties, I suppose, roof lines, roof heights. That was the kind of main bugbearer when it came to planning. We got there in the end after we had to go for further information at one stage, but it was a very straightforward process after that. Once we went back and redesigned it a little bit, we originally had a 2-story dwelling that was reduced to a story and a half. So if that's all the hassle we have, I think we'll be okay. So
yeah, no, listen, you're absolutely right. As somebody who's kind of come through 2 applications and sitting in on board plan, all I can tell you that you probably got away lightly. So in terms of kind of the local reaction to the build, because it was on family land, were your kind of local neighbours, were they broadly supportive?
Yeah, now in fairness, we tried to keep in the loop with them as much as we could. April would know him obviously more than I do, me being the blow and going out to Lunlow. But yeah, so we contacted. We're fortunate that there's not, I say, a whole pile of neighbours on the road. There would be further up the road, if you get me. But where we're building, there's only April's home, her brother's home, and then it's a holiday home, would you believe, for a couple from Dublin. And we just contacted them, and there was no issues, and not that much disruption to the rest of the place. So yeah, so onwards, as they say.
Very good. So overcoming the issue of planning in terms of, because you both wanted to input into the design, did you work with an architect or an engineer or a planner? What professionals did you work with in terms of the design of the home?
Well, I suppose I would take it back to just before deciding on what route we were going to go down. April obviously used her creativity and drew up a plan of what she wanted the house to look like. And then I had my few cents, and we went back and forth, and we came up with a design, and we used a helpful tool online. The name escapes me, but it was a free online software that you could just draw up a home. And then we came to a decision that would be the eventual nuts and bolts of the house, for lack of a better phrase. And after we had it designed ourselves, we got an engineer to put it on construction paper. And so we didn't go with an architect or anything like that. We went to an engineer for the design process and the planning process. So
that's great that you had such a clear idea together, but it's also great that your ideas aligned. That doesn't always happen. Normally when there's alignment, it means there wasn't too much involvement on either part. But when you both want to contribute your ideas, you were obviously on the same page in terms of how you wanted your home to look.
Carol, now it's about picking your battles. So like basically, so April would have her say and I'd have my say, and then I'd bend the knee, or vice versa. But yeah, no, look, we came to the conclusion fairly rapidly. We had a few designs in our head, but what we ended up with was the most natural, I suppose, agreement between the both of us. Like, for once again, to repeat the phrase, for lack of a better phrase, but we were delighted where we ended up.
I think something that surprises most people in terms of a self-build is that you think you have a carte blanche to design, but you really don't, because actually the planners have very tight guidelines on not just building heights, obviously, but the aspect of your home. Yeah. There's a lot that is just outside of your control, and you have to stay within the nature of the nature of what's being built around over the past decade as well. So there's a lot of choice taken away, which might bother some people. For others, it's probably a welcome relief. The guidelines that are going to get you through. So in terms of the physical build, how hands-on are you? Is this kind of a direct labor, or did you take in a contractor to run this?
Yeah, so it's direct labor. So now, look, I'll openly admit I do have the softest hands in the construction industry. I'm not. I'm used to clipboards and pens and stuff like that, and maybe setting out with devices more than getting into the rough and tumble of it. But look, we were an ever presence on site. The site is 40 minutes from where we're currently living. I'm there maybe 5-6 days a week. If for nothing else, inspecting what's going on. We hired. We're hiring contractors as we go. We have a good friend of the family, of April's family, that is looking after the groundworks for us. He's plenty of experience in the game as well. And then, I suppose it's just as the stages go, we're just kind of approaching contractors ourselves. And like, if there's anything to be done on site, like for example, moving stuff around or setting out, that'd be I'd be able to help with that. And then I suppose, look, if you need a little bit of labour here and there, I might throw myself into it, but hopefully I try to avoid as much of that as I can.
Very good. And who's project managing this from a cost point of view?
Now, look, it's absolutely myself and April, but predominantly April. April's excellent with figures, so she's well able to take care of that side of things. And then it's about trying to manage and afford what we can within our means. Like, it's not an endless pit of money at all, especially in this climate with the increase in prices in construction materials and labour and everything else that goes along with it over the last couple of years, which hasn't exactly been helpful for us. But no, we do have a budget. We plan to stick to it. And then it's about kind of basically just coming up with compromises throughout the build if something does exceed our budget in that way. So, long story short, me and April.
Yeah, well, look, do you know, again, this is something that's really always fascinated me, and it fascinated me going back decades, that actually you can have people come in to the new build process having never been exposed to construction, but just coming from a place of very strong project management, whether it's their character or whether it's from their professional background. But a good project manager can really transform a self-build project. You know, it gets stuff done on time. It gets your scheduling right. It cuts down your clashes between the different trades on site. It gets the ordering and the priority of what needs to happen when. Look, to be honest, I think that if you're working on a self-build, if you don't have project management skills, that's the one thing I would really recommend you invest in. But if either party are bringing project management skills, then that really is an asset into itself. In terms of budgeting, well, first of all, sorry, what stage of the build are you at the moment?
Okay, so we've just, as of this evening, we finished our rise and walls. So yeah, so it's exciting to see it physically come together. Yeah.
Actually, this is normally the time when people panic and they think, oh, this room was too big, this room was too small, we should have done this here. Has anything occurred to you watching that process today?
Yeah, there was one circumstance, unfortunately, where we did run out with a little bit of ground in the foundation. We lost 6 inches of a wall in our sitting room. So look, it isn't the straw that's going to break the camel's back at all. But it's just a little bit smaller than it needed to be. So that's the only thing.
Do you know, that is the only thing about a self-build. It's like you have to go through it to learn. So everybody I know who has done a self-build, the minute they finished it, has ideas on what they would do differently, like almost instantly. And unfortunately, you have to go through it to learn it. It's very difficult to learn from other people's projects. In terms of then the budget that you had set out, did you have to get, I presume you got a mortgage?
Yeah. We got a mortgage. Yeah.
And in terms of stage payments, was the mortgage application, was that fairly straightforward for you both?
It was. We were fortunate enough that we decided to go with a broker for our mortgage, and Finance Solutions and being the name of that broker, and like the people there were incredibly helpful. Predominantly we were dealing with a girl called Sinead and another girl called Kaylee, and they were just the biggest assets that we could have ever had. Like, obviously being novices to the mortgage game, being our first mortgage, and they were able to steer us in what documentation was required, when it was required, who we should be contacting, what we can be doing to increase our chances of securing the mortgage. I would look personally myself. It mightn't be for everyone, but I would 100% recommend getting a broker to anyone who would ask me.
That's amazing to hear that experience. And in fact, only in recent weeks, I was chatting to another intending first-time buyer, and she actually was talking about a really great experience she had with her bank. So really the conclusion I've drawn is that it comes down to how helpful the people that you're dealing with are, and how really invested they are in getting your mortgage through, because it can be a really stressful time, and it depends on your inclination towards paperwork, but it can be a very stressful time. So actually anything that simplifies the process, anything that makes it a little bit easier. Tell me again the name of the brokers you were dealing with. It sounds like they were good to deal with.
Finance Solutions is the company. Sinead O'Carroll was the person I was predominantly dealing with, I suppose, and she was an absolute joy to deal with from start to finish. So and look, it's not over yet, as we're only on our first drawdown payment, so there's a few more stages to go. But Yeah, no, look, I 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh, fantastic.
That's my own view.
That's really positive to hear. So in terms of then having your finance in place, and it is finite, as you mentioned earlier. So in terms of the budget from when you started planning and pricing and getting your initial quotes together, to where you are now, what kind of slide are you noticing? Do you, like, obviously construction materials have increased in cost, have decreased in availability, there's transport challenges, so how are the costs that you're experiencing today different to maybe what you'd been planning for when you got your initial quotes?
Yeah, so like initially when we started this process, this is going on 2-3 years ago, I suppose. It wasn't. I may have actually made it sound fairly easy to come to a decision in the design, but it was a long, like it was 3, 4, 5 months talking about what way we want the house to look at, and in that time, fortunately enough, me being in the construction industry, I was part of my daily role, I suppose, would be to monitor pricing of materials in the industry for any specific job I was on. So I was kind of noticing trends going up and down ever since, I suppose, the whole Suez Canal debacle. I suppose that was a kind of a kick in the teeth for steel across the world. And then lumber was, I was kind of tracking the markets across the world as well. Like it was, and then just concrete works, obviously, with the levies that have come in this year. I believe they came in April. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was one of those things that we were kind of always able to keep an eye on it. So I was kind of knowing full well what to expect at the time when we were actually going to be purchasing or sourcing materials or labour. So we have noticed that, look, if we were building maybe 3 years ago when we started initially, there's probably a markup of anywhere between 20 and 40%. That's kind of
huge.
what I've noticed. Yeah.
How is that going to impact you in terms of the finance you have in place? Will you be able to get to the stage you need to get to with the money that you have currently, even though I suspect it won't be kind of completing the home the way you might have liked to see it completed?
Yeah, well, like, it's the way I'm trying to trick myself in my mind into saying that it's going to be a 20-year project as opposed to having it built in a year, if you get me. So, like, look, we mightn't be able to get the finished article when it comes to furniture or built-ins or whatever, but like we've probably been priced out of that realistically. But we'll obviously aim for the best and come to some sort of compromise for the time being. But I think we absolutely get the structure and done for what we hope to achieve, and then we'll also get the main, I suppose, components of the house. But some other things will have to take a hit, and that's just natural for most people, I'm assuming, nowadays. So.
You know what, it absolutely is, and it's returning back to a generation. I'm sure if you speak to your parents about when they moved into their home, they probably had rooms that weren't furnished. I'm sure they didn't have the dining suite they wanted, and I think there was just a decade or two, probably 2 decades in between then, where the kind of instant gratification kicked in, and a home wasn't complete until every home was kind of photograph ready. And that's just not the reality when we're speaking. And by the way, not just to self-builders, but actually to people moving into homes, particularly second-hand homes that require a bit of work. You've got people saying, you know what, look, we'll paint the kitchen and that can be our 5-year project, or, something. So actually, I think people are much more realistic now about I suppose what they would consider their finished property insofar as the home is never finished.
Like I'll put it for sorry to cut you off there, Carol, but like one thing that we have noticed, or that we have already made a decision upon, is that the garage is gone. Like it's like we were getting quotes, like just incredible quotes, like maybe 40,000-50,000 for a garage. Like, I don't know where people are coming up with these figures nowadays, like, but that's just extortionate in my opinion. So it was the first thing to go, and I considered buying, those steel containers and the shipping containers, and just have one of those instead for the bones of maybe 500 to 2,000 euro. Like, just do the same thing. But
absolutely. Look, to be honest, you're the second self-builder I've spoken to this month who has said exactly that. The garage is going to have to go. Whereas actually, I probably would have been of the other approach where I would have built the garage and lived in it and done the other more gradually. But in terms of materials, I think we're in a really difficult position at the moment. And it's good that in your day job you understand that, because actually what I'm finding from some self-builders is that if they don't have the relationship of trust with either their contractor or with the different tradespeople coming in, they're a bit skeptical when they hear about these huge hikes in construction materials, where it's actually that's absolutely real, and you know that from your day job. So at least you don't have that extra layer of thinking, oh my God, are these guys just, do they see us coming? Do they think we're fools because we're first-time buyers building our first home? Where it's actually that is the reality on the ground. Tell me, how has your experience been with actually being able to get tradespeople?
Well, look, I say so far from who we've hired, it's we've been fortunate enough that, as I said, for the groundswork contractor, it was a friend of the family that was easy enough to organise. The block layer, once again, April sourced the block layer through mutual friends at work. I was actually struggling I contacted maybe 6 or 7 block layers, and each told me a different story, and then April came home and had a block layer sorted. So I was just like, fantastic, brilliant. So that was handy. What I'm struggling with at the moment now actually is an ironmonger or a steel fixer. We have a detail in our house that's a corner window, and getting a fabricated post for the structural support. I thought it was off the shelf. Like it's a standard measurement. It's a 3 meter high post with a couple of plates welded onto it. You think it'd be something you can buy in a shop or any builders providers?
And it's not.
No, it's not. No. So I kind of dropped the ball personally on that one a little bit. So that's probably the main hassle in my life being a self-builder at the moment, but I'm sure there'll be a few more down the road. But what I'm hearing is plasters is going to be the next thing. That's going to be the one that's going to be. That might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But
well, the only thing is, with April's dad having been a foreman on sites for a long time, there might be a bit of a network built up there, and equally important to the network is a few favors in the bank. So he might know a few people who owe a few favors, and that's one of the massive advantages of being local to the area where you're building. The fact that they are, people you've gone to school with or something like that. And I know it's not local necessarily for yourself, but for April, and particularly when her dad has been in the trade as well, there'd be maybe a knowledge of who's good, who you'd want to call into your site and who you mightn't.
Exactly. He's been great help, in fairness. Like I say I talk to him nearly every day at this stage about one thing and one thing alone, and that's the house. And he's been guiding us, and with his experience, as you rightly mentioned there, like he was able to kind of steer us in the right directions with some suppliers. He's helping out on site. When we're not there, considering we're 40 minutes away, he's helping out managing the job if there's contractors there. So look, we'd be lost without him, and again that goes for everyone in April's family who's helped out so far as well, being so close to home. We understand we're in a pretty lucky situation with that. So long may it continue.
Fantastic. Well, look, you need to keep the relationships good with the in-laws until the home is built anyway. Well, obviously I'm beyond, but really to get that done. Have you an idea? Have you a target in your mind of when you'd like to get this done? When you'd like to be even moving in? I think that maybe when it's a self-build, we shouldn't talk about when the house is finished, but have you an idea of when you'd like to be living in it?
Yeah. So all going well, we've given ourselves a year program. So when we started a month ago, we broke ground actually a month and 3 days ago. So we're already up to our horizon walls now at this stage. So all going well, if we were in sometime before next summer, that'd be a day for champagne, I think. But we'll see how it goes. Yourselves, things turn up in the construction industry at around every corner. So you never know what's going to happen.
Do you know what it is? And the fact that you're kind of mentally prepared for that it doesn't throw you, that's a really big thing, I suppose. In terms of when you're going down the direct labour route, it really is a case of keeping the relationships with the trades going and not wasting anybody else's time, not bringing somebody in if they can't do their job because a previous trade hadn't finished theirs. Essentially kind of respecting their time will kind of make them more likely to respect yours. And I appreciate it. It can be a frustrating time, but it really does come down to relationships, and
of course
in fact, only in the last week, I was hearing stories about somebody who was frustrated about his friend who was the electrician, and there was early morning texts, early morning weekend texts and relationships can sour very, very quickly if you're not respecting people's time, and, especially when it's local or there might be favours being called in. So that's definitely something to be mindful of as well.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Eoghan, the Rising Walls today, what's your next milestone?
Okay, I suppose the next one I'm focusing on really at the moment is getting our hardcore, getting our subfloor poured and getting our installation in. It's like once I basically get the radon barrier and the concrete poured, I call my block layers back, and then we get up to first floor level, and then so on and so forth. But no, I'm trying to decompartmentalize everything and just take as kind of divide it up in my mind and just say, if we have this done by this date, then we can focus on this and we can focus on this, and then we can start lining up more and more contractors. But yeah, let's just get standing inside and internally at a finished floor level, and then I'll worry about the rest of it after that.
Okay, how hands-on are you planning to get?
Oh well, look, I honestly, it's every minute of every hour I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
It's one of those things that I kind of want to make sure that we were mentioning there about respecting people's time, but I'm cognizant. I'm also conscious of the fact that I probably am beginning to annoy people with the amount of people I'm ringing and how often I'm ringing them, and just making sure that they're giving us the respect as much as we respect them. So yeah, no, it's going well, like for what it is at the early stages of this project. So I have no real major complaints from that side of things so far. But as we said already, we'll see what's around the corner.
Tell me, Eoghan, finally, is April's dad a patient man?
Incredibly patient, incredibly. Sure, he has to deal with me. So
I was thinking if he's a site foreman for years, but he mightn't have dealt with so little experience on site. But listen, everybody has to learn. But it's good to have somebody there who actually knows what they're doing. Because you can do a lot of the physical labor if you've got somebody who can tell you, who can point you in the right direction, make sure it's being done properly.
Yeah. Look, I've alluded to it already that we're very fortunate to have April's dad in the mix, like so. Given his vast experience in the construction industry, and it's not just on major sites. Like, he's built houses before. He's built 3 of their own houses in the family. Like, so he's a fountain of information. And look, we're blessed. But it's one of those things that we like to take ownership as well. And make sure that we're not relying too heavy on anyone or burdening them as well, because you have to take the good with the bad. Like, you can't exactly just like literally plague them to with all their free time. So we have to take some responsibility.
Listen, that will happen as well. You are just in the first kind of month, and not only that, but your own confidence will build, and April's will, and you'll be surprised when it's your own how much you will want to get stuck in there. But listen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to chat to us, because again, you're documenting this on Instagram, so we'll definitely be following along. But it would be great maybe to chat to you in a few months when you're a few months into the journey, and just, again, I suppose kind of final question, because even though you're at a very early stage and this answer may change, so far, is there one thing you wish you had have known before you started, or that you could pass on to anybody else who's at an even earlier stage?
I suppose I probably have 2 key bits of advice. Become very accustomed to Microsoft Excel and track your budgets and put every penny into it, that you know what you have to spend or how much or when you can spend it. It'll become your best friend, because I'm absolutely crap with figures, with holding on to money. That's why the person's well and truly with April. So I would lose the run myself. I'd be like, I like alu-clad windows when PVC windows do the same thing at different function, whatever it is. Yeah. That'd be my first thing. Make sure you're tracking everything at every moment. Actually, 3 things. Document, because it's always good to look back. It's a little bit of a vanity project, I suppose, the Instagram page. But in 20 years' time, if social media is still a thing at that stage, it'll be always good to look back at the memories of how and when we were able to do it. And it's all about developing relationships is key. Make sure you give as much as you get in terms of respecting people. Make sure that you're keeping contact always in good terms. Try not to get frustrated. And look, self-building is stressful. Everyone knows that. But I'm not kind of having an epiphany here for everyone to see or to listen to. But try to keep her cool, because good things will come. to those who wait. So.
Listen, I think that's really good advice, and getting handy with Excel. It sounds like yourself and April kind of have the right division of labour going on, to be able to make it through, and that's a really important thing. So look, best of luck for the coming weeks and months. We'll definitely be watching in on Instagram. That's and by the way, for anybody listening in, Eoghan and April's journey, you can follow that. They're self-build in County Clare. It's at Instagram. It's at selfbuild_in_the_hills. So at self-build in the hills with a couple of underscores there, and you'll find them. Eoghan, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope the next time when we're checking in to see how your progress is going, April will be able to join us as well.
Absolutely.
So that's all we've time for today. My thanks to show producer Katie Tallon and to the production team at Hear Me Roar Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out our other real estate and construction shows on iPropertyRadio. Before we go, maybe a special word of thanks to our sponsor, Place Engage, using immersive technologies for a data-driven platform for more successful public consultation and community engagement for your development project. So my thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of Breaking Ground on iProperty Radio.